Good morning. Welcome to Kenya News Update today. In a political landscape already simmering with tension, a new and deeply contentious chapter has erupted. Oscar Sudi, the outspoken Kapsayret MP, has launched a direct and incendiary attack on Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, dragging the painful memory of the 2007 Kiambaa church tragedy back into the political spotlight. This isn't just another political squabble. It's a calculated detonation at the very foundations of the ruling coalition's unity. For the next 12 minutes, we will dive deep into this explosive controversy, examining the historical wounds it reopens, the political calculus behind it, and what it means for the stability of Kenya's government. We'll present multiple perspectives, from political analysts to voices from the affected communities, and unpack the staggering statistics of inequality that form the backdrop to this high-stakes drama. This is a story about power, memory, and the dangerous game of playing with fire. Let's begin with the immediate trigger. In a series of public statements over the past week, Oscar Sudi has accused Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua of what he terms historical amnesia and political hypocrisy. Sudi's core allegation is that Gachagua, while now positioning himself as a national unifier, was part of a political machinery in 2007 that, according to Sudi, contributed to the toxic atmosphere that led to post-election violence. He specifically pointed to the Kiambaa church incident, where over 30 people, mostly women and children, were burned to death after seeking refuge in a church during the chaos. Sudi's language was not subtle. He asked, and I quote, "Where was the unity sermon in 2007 when mothers and children were perishing in flames? Some of us remember the rallies, the rhetoric." This is a direct, personal, and profoundly dangerous line of attack. It doesn't just critique policy. It attempts to morally implicate the deputy president in one of the darkest episodes of Kenya's modern history. To understand the gravity of this, we must revisit 2007 and 2008. The disputed presidential election between M.Y. Kibaki and Raila Odinga descended into widespread ethnic and political violence. Over 1,100 people were killed and more than 600,000 displaced. The Kiambaa church arson attack in Eldoret became the single most horrific symbol of that brutality. The International Criminal Court later indicted several high-profile Kenyans, including the current President William Ruto, for crimes against humanity related to the violence. All cases eventually collapsed or were withdrawn, but the scars remain deep and visceral. For Oscar Sudi to invoke this specific tragedy is to tap into a well of unhealed trauma, particularly within the Kalenjin and Kikuyu communities who were most directly affected in the Rift Valley. It's a move that many see as crossing a red line, deliberately weaponizing collective pain for contemporary political gain. So, what is Sudi's endgame? Political analysts we spoke to suggest several intertwined motives. First, and most obviously, this is a power play within the United Democratic Alliance. The UDA Sudi is a staunch loyalist of President William Ruto. There is a growing perception, whether real or imagined, of a rift between President Ruto and his deputy, Rigathi Gachagua. Sudi's attack could be seen as a trial balloon or a flanking maneuver from the president's camp to weaken Gachagua's independent political base, particularly in the Mount Kenya region. By questioning Gachagua's moral standing, Sudi aims to erode his credibility as a regional kingpin. Second, Sudi is positioning himself. Known for his blunt, often controversial rhetoric, he is carving out a role as the attack dog of the administration, willing to say the unsayable to defend the president's interests and elevate his own profile. This controversy guarantees him national headlines and solidifies his base among hardline supporters. But let's hear the other side. Supporters of Deputy President Gachagua have reacted with fury. They frame Sudi's comments as reckless, divisive, and a betrayal of the peace and reconciliation that Kenya has painstakingly built since 2008. They argue that Gachagua, like President Ruto, was a victim of the ICC process and has since dedicated himself to the hustler nation economic agenda, which is supposed to transcend ethnic divisions. One Gachagua ally told us, "This is the work of political mercenaries who want to destroy our coalition from within. They are playing with dynamite for cheap popularity." They point out that dragging up 2007 serves no purpose other than to reopen old wounds and distract from the government's development record. From this perspective, Sudi is not a loyalist but a saboteur, threatening the very stability of the government he claims to serve. Now, let's bring in the crucial context of economic disparity, which fuels much of the political tension in Kenya. A recent report from Oxfam, released just this week, paints a staggering picture of global and national inequality. The collective wealth of the world's billionaires has now reached a mind-boggling $18.3 trillion. Here in Kenya, the gap between the super rich and the poor is widening at an alarming rate. To visualize the scale of this divide, consider this. While the wealth of Kenyan billionaires has grown exponentially, the tax burden remains disproportionately on ordinary citizens. For instance, Oxfam notes that the wealth of the richest has surged by 730% in real terms since the early 2000s. Let's put that on screen. This isn't just a global trend, it's a local reality. The report further states that in many countries, including Kenya, the poorest half of the population pays a higher effective tax rate than the richest 1%. This creates a powder keg of public resentment. When politicians like Sudi and Gachagua engage in bitter public feuds, many Kenyans watching from the sidelines see it as a distraction from these pressing economic issues. The debate feels like elite squabbling, while the majority struggle with the high cost of living, unemployment, and a tax system they perceive as unfair. The Oxfam data shows that the wealth of the richest has grown by 200 and 160% in the last decade alone, a figure that dwarfs the growth in average incomes. This economic backdrop is critical. It explains why political messages that frame leaders as hustlers versus dynasties resonated so powerfully. But when those same leaders are seen fighting among themselves, public trust evaporates. A recent opinion poll suggested that 96% of Kenyans believe political infighting is harming the country's economic prospects. That's a near universal sentiment. Let's look at that number. Back to the Sudi Gachagua feud. What has been the official response from State House? Notably, President William Ruto has maintained a studied silence. He has not publicly reprimanded Sudi, nor has he offered a full-throated defense of his deputy. This silence is deafening and is being interpreted in various ways. Some see it as tacit approval, allowing Sudi to do the dirty work of clipping Gachagua's wings without the president getting his hands dirty. Others believe the president is walking a tightrope, trying to manage competing factions within his party and maybe waiting for the right moment to intervene. A third, more cynical view is that this public friction is a deliberate strategy to keep both men in check, ensuring neither becomes too powerful or popular independently. The president's next move, or lack thereof, will be the clearest signal of where power truly lies. The implications of this feud extend far beyond personal rivalries. First, it threatens the cohesion of the UDA party ahead of the 2027 general election. A divided house cannot stand, and open warfare between factions can lead to defections and a weakened campaign machinery. Second, it undermines the government's key agenda. How can the administration effectively rally the nation behind its affordable housing, levy, or agricultural reforms when its top figures are trading accusations about historical atrocities? Third, and most dangerously, it risks reigniting ethnic tensions. The 2007 violence was heavily ethnicized. By explicitly invoking Kiambaa, Sudi, perhaps unintentionally, is framing the current political disagreement through that same dangerous lens. Community elders from the Rift Valley and central Kenya have expressed deep concern, urging both leaders to cease fire immediately and focus on reconciliation and development. Let's now consider a comparative perspective. Political infighting is not unique to Kenya. In the United States, where President Donald Trump is now in his second term, the Republican Party has seen similar internal battles between establishment figures and the Trump-aligned wing. However, the Kenyan context is uniquely sensitive due to its history of politically instigated violence. The consequences of reckless rhetoric here are not just electoral defeat, they can be measured in lives lost. This is why many civil society organizations have condemned Sudi's remarks in the strongest terms. They argue that Kenya's political class must learn from the past, not exploit it. The building of a national identity requires a conscious effort to depoliticize tragedy and focus on a shared future. What happens next? Several scenarios are possible. Scenario 1, President Ruto steps in, publicly reconciles his deputy and MP Sudi, and imposes party discipline. This would be the most stabilizing outcome, but would require a significant display of authority. Scenario 2, the feud continues to simmer, becoming a permanent Cold War within the government, leading to policy paralysis and a disillusioned electorate. Scenario 3, the worst-case scenario, the rhetoric escalates further, spilling out of political rallies and into communities, potentially leading to localized unrest. The government's ability to manage this crisis will be a major test of its maturity and its commitment to the national peace it often espouses. In conclusion, Oscar Sudi's decision to take aim at Rigathi Gachagua over the 2007 Kiambaa church tragedy is one of the most provocative political maneuvers in recent years. It is a high-risk strategy that blends personal ambition, factional party politics, and the dangerous exploitation of historical trauma. While it may offer Sudi short-term notoriety, the long-term costs for party unity, government effectiveness, and national cohesion could be immense. This controversy holds up a mirror to Kenya's political evolution, revealing both how far the country has come from the darkness of 2008 and how perilously close it can still circle to the edge. The economic data we examined shows a population under immense strain, looking to its leaders for solutions, not scapegoats or historical recriminations. The coming days will reveal whether Kenya's political leadership can rise above the fray or whether they will remain trapped in the cycles of the past. For Kenya News Update today, this has been a deep dive analysis. We urge our leaders to choose their words with the weight of history in mind and to focus on the urgent task of building a more equitable and united Kenya. Subscribe to Kenya News Update today for more in-depth reporting.